I am thrilled to introduce Rich Karlgaard, publisher at Forbes magazine. Rich writes a column in every issue of Forbes called Innovation Rules, which covers economic, technology trends, business transformation, and conversations with leading CEOs. He also shares perspective through a variety of media channels, including op-eds in the Wall Street Journal and TV news shows. He's an accomplished entrepreneur, having started 2 magazines, a venture capital firm, and a leading civic organization at Silicon Valley. Please help me give a warm welcome to Rich Karlgaard.
Thank you. How many of you have heard of the state of North Dakota? Okay. Well, that's where I was born and raised and graduated from high school and went to it was then called Bismarck Junior College, and it was 3 blocks from my house. Why did I make the decision to go to Bismarck Junior College? Well, a couple years before, I happened to be watching the Rose Bowl on TV, and Stanford was playing Ohio State, and Ohio State was the #1 ranked team in the country and undefeated, and Stanford beat them. And I was absolutely delighted because I was kind of already starting to experience a high school person's rebellion, and so the idea that a creative, long-haired hippie team from California would punch Woody Hayes in the nose just absolutely delighted me, and that their band played rock and roll music. I think that their halftime following the Ohio State band, the Ohio State band with the tuba that dots the I. In comes the Stanford band playing Trucking by the Grateful Dead. There were 2 problems, though, with my sudden desire to go to Stanford. One is that I didn't have the grades, and 2, our family didn't have the money. My dad was a high school athletic director, and my mom worked at home. So I think the most my dad ever earned was $60,000, and he was, prior to the oil boom in North Dakota, that was a pretty good salary in North Dakota. So I began to plot how I was going to make my escape from North Dakota, which seemed like an eminently rational thing to do. Now, of course, I go back and visit, and there are all these oil gazillionaires, and I wonder how rational it is. But I knew that I had to get the grades up, and I knew I had to find some way of driving the costs down. And so I made the decision to go to my junior college 3 blocks from house and live at home and dedicate myself to academics a little bit anyway, and to fulfill what were kind of unrealized dreams in sports. I was a cross-country runner and a track and field runner, and we were the state champions in high school at Bismarck High, but although I ran in the state meet and qualified, I was not by any means one of our stars, and I was pretty much of a late bloomer and thought of myself as a late bloomer. So I concocted what has turned out to be, I think, a late bloomer strategy. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And what I was able to do at Bismarck Junior College was to get good grades. I was able to be captain of my cross-country team. I was able to run in the junior college nationals and in track. I was able to run for student office. I was able to try my hand on the student newspaper and all of those kinds of things. And although I never got myself up to Pac-8, it was then the Pac-8, not the Pac-12, the Pac-8 standards of the great West Coast College Athletic Conference at Stanford and Cal and USC and UCLA, I was able to impress the coach at Stanford, and Stanford depended on a lot of walk-ons. I mean, they'd have a few scholarships to hand out to really good runners, but they depended on walk-ons. And I later learned, when I was at Stanford as a walk-on on the cross-country team, that it was in fact, I was one of those borderline applicants, and my extracurriculars, chiefly track and field, were able to push me over to the top and get in to Stanford. Without that, I wouldn't have been able to get in. I certainly couldn't have gotten in out of high school. And so I'm here to praise the late bloomer in American society. I don't think the late bloomer gets nearly enough cultural credit. For some reason, in this society, lately, we've gone the opposite direction. You know, where I live in Silicon Valley, I've lived in Silicon Valley my whole life. Man, if you're not a billionaire by the time you're 30, you feel like a failure there. And the pressure that this puts on kids, and anybody you know, from big city environments, New York, Los Angeles, Washington, knows of the pressure that upper middle class kids feel to get into these elite colleges, and it starts going back. In New York now, the plan is you've got to have the right preschool and kindergarten, you know, to get yourself on the right trajectory to ultimately wind up at Princeton or Yale or Harvard or something like that. Well, that's fine, you know, for the less than 1% that will be able to pull that off. But most of us aren't going to be able to pull that off, either financially or either because we're you know, we don't have the gifts, or we're simply not ready to do that. And I think, you know, this is just national foolishness because we are living longer lives. There's a lot of research to say that adolescence really kind of goes till age 25, that there should be a new category. All of you are, the ones who are laughing are parents, by the way. That there ought to be a new category of post-adolescence that is officially recognized. And of course, it is unofficially recognized. Auto insurance companies, you know, don't give you any kind of a decent break until you're 25 years old. And so there are a lot of late bloomers out there. There are a lot of people not named Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or, you know, Sergey Brin or Larry Page who, you know, need to experiment. You know, Walter Isaacson is the president of the Aspen Institute, wrote the great bestseller on Steve Jobs. And even though Steve Jobs was sort of a very mature person at an early age, Jobs was quick to tell you, and he told a Stanford commencement class in 2005, that it was dropping out of Reed College that was the best thing that ever happened to him. His family couldn't afford Reed College, an expensive four-year private college in Portland, Oregon. And Steve felt pressured to take classes that would have an ROI, a return on investment, because he could see the sacrifice his parents were putting into this. Well, he ended up dropping out and auditing classes that he really liked. One of the classes he took was on calligraphy. You know, what market value possibly does calligraphy have? Except that when he came up with the idea for the Apple Macintosh, he was really devoted to having a range of great type fonts that would be available for this, and he worked with an emerging software company in Silicon Valley called Adobe to develop those kind of fonts, and with the laser printer companies, and that was where the Apple Macintosh really made its first success, from a hopeless subject of calligraphy that Steve Jobs took in the kind of the manner of a late bloomer experimenting. And so the community college is this place of experimentation. I think the value is going to grow over time. We're living longer. And I just want to make 2 points. I think community colleges are in a real sweet spot right now. On the trade end that was talked about on the panel, I absolutely believe we're on the cusp of a manufacturing and infrastructure renaissance. So many of the inputs in the global economy that led to the massive outsourcing to Asia and other places, the economic rationale is beginning to go the other way. The labor arbitrage that exists between the United States and Asia is narrowing. Fuel prices are going up. For political reasons, we may find that there are more tensions associated with trade with China anyway. So for a lot of reasons, and then the energy boom that's occurring right under our noses here in the United States, there is a lot of reason to believe that those high-skilled blue-collar jobs, the skilled trades, are going to come back. And they've been beaten up on quite severely over the last couple of generations, but I believe they're coming back. And the other thing I want to talk about just for a minute or two is, and it's been mentioned, the MOOCs, the massive open online colleges. Where I live in Silicon Valley, 2 ex-Stanford professors have each raised more than $20 million in venture capital over the last 12 months. One company is called Udacity, started by Sebastian Thrun, who used to be at Google. Sebastian Thrun started the Google driverless car project in 2008. And everybody oohed and awed when this driverless car was able to do figure eights in a parking lot in 2008. Today, that car can get up and down mountain passes at the speed limit without a driver. It last year demonstrated that you could get down Lombard Street in San Francisco, that really snaky one. It's amazing. The first experiment that he did with Udacity was to teach an open, free course on artificial intelligence. 160,000 people from around the world signed up. Every country in the world except Iran, Yemen, and North Korea were represented. And when he gave the same final test to the open online students as he did to his own Stanford students, the #1 Stanford student finished in the 400s. Now, Clayton Christensen, the Harvard Business School professor, believes that 25 to 50% of colleges that exist in the United States today will not be here in the next 20 years. 1/4 to 1/2 of colleges are going to fail. And you can pretty much guess the ones that are. They won't be the big state universities. It won't be University of Michigan, won't be University of California, and so forth. It won't be the Ivies and the Ivy equivalents. It's going to be the really expensive liberal arts four-year colleges that aren't well endowed. Some of them lucked into, you know, alumni who went on and created a lot of, well, Grinnell College in Iowa. Bob Noyce, the founder of Intel, went to Grinnell and endowed Grinnell a lot of money. And then they picked a young financial manager out of Omaha in the 1950s named Warren Buffett to manage their endowment. So they're doing very well. But if you're not Grinnell, you might be in trouble. And I think we're heading for this education system where the combination of community colleges and the MOOCs is just going to be hugely powerful because you guys will embrace it. And the ones who are in trouble, the irony is that the ones who are in gravest trouble are the ones who are going to fight it because they're led around the nose by their professors and not by any common sense thinking. And the thing is with the MOOCs, there, you know, a handful of people, such as the ones who beat the Stanford student in the final test, presumably all from India or somewhere, you know, probably manage this on their own pretty well. For the majority of people, though, to be able to look at the online courses and as they become movie theater high definition over time, and then to be able to talk about it in a led discussion at a community college, this is going to be very powerful. I would bet a sizable amount of money that this will be the new model, and it's the model that's exactly appropriate, that accomplishes all the goals within the constraints that have been talked about here. So I think your future is glorious. I'm very proud to have gone to Bismarck Junior College, and it's given me all the chances of a lifetime. Thank you much.